The world's most prolific serial killer might never have been caught if he had known how to use a computer. Imagine a person committing serial killings while also being the friend of his victims, a well-known figure in the city, and, on top of that, a doctor. This is the astonishing story of Dr. Harold Shipman, who used his clinic not to save lives, but to take them. For 23 years, he carried out his murders right under everyone's noses in Hyde, a small town in England with only about 30 residents. Even after putting more than 250 people to eternal sleep, no one suspected Dr. Harold Shipman. And perhaps they never would have, if he hadn't made a small mistake. What was his reason for killing people? How did he go undetected for so long? And what clue did the police find that exposed years of murder in an instant? Dr. Harold Shipman mostly targeted patients who lived alone and were elderly so that their deaths wouldn't raise suspicion. He would give these patients a lot of time and even visit them at home, listening to their problems and making them feel that, although they were alone, he was always there to listen. Some patients trusted Dr. Shipman so much that they even gave him the keys to their houses. Because of his kind and caring demeanor, he became quite popular in Hyde. People believed he was treating elderly patients purely out of kindness. But behind this facade, Dr. Shipman was gathering information: who lived alone, who had wealth and property, who visited their homes, and where their relatives lived. Once he was sure about his target, he would administer a lethal overdose of medicine. Since the victims were already over 80 years old, their deaths didn't raise any suspicion. This continued for years without anyone even suspecting him, until he made a mistake. Dr. Shipman began his career in the town of Pontefract, about 70 kilometers from Hyde, where he worked in a hospital. Then, in 1974, he moved to Todmorden, where he took a position as a general practitioner at the Abraham and Marrow Medical Center. While working there, he started prescribing excessive amounts of pethidine, a painkiller that also had narcotic effects. Shipman himself was addicted to pethidine, and he intentionally prescribed it to his patients. As a result, patients felt exceptionally good after taking the medication, unaware that they were essentially being drugged. This was one reason why patients were drawn to him. Eventually, he was caught and dismissed from the hospital, and his medical license was almost revoked. However, Shipman managed to avoid losing his license. After spending some time in a rehabilitation center, he was largely forgotten, and in 1977, he moved to Hyde, where he joined the Donnybrook Medical Center as a general practitioner. By 1980, he was well established in Hyde, practicing medicine and continuing both his drug addiction and his secret murders. The frequency of his killings increased significantly after 1993, when he opened his own clinic in Hyde and became a well-respected name in the community. For many years, he continued his crimes without arousing suspicion. The first real doubts emerged in March 1998 when Dr. Linda Reynolds, who worked at Brooks Surgery, located opposite Shipman's clinic, raised concerns about the unusually high death rate among his patients. She pointed out that in the past 3 months alone, 16 of his patients had died, while in the same period, Brooks Surgery, which had 3 times as many patients, recorded only 14 deaths. The suspicion deepened when it was discovered that all 16 of Shipman's deceased patients had been cremated instead of buried. Most Christians bury their loved ones after death, with only a few opting for cremation. Dr. Linda reported her concerns in a report to the Manchester coroner. She noted that most of Shipman's deceased patients were elderly women found dead in their homes. Furthermore, in nearly all cases, the deaths occurred when Shipman was either at their house or had recently visited them, an unlikely coincidence. However, an investigation by the police found no concrete evidence, and after a month, the case was closed. After the investigation was dropped, Shipman continued his murders, killing 3 more people. But his time was running out. His last victim was 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy, a former mayor of Hyde, who was found dead at her home on June 24, 1998. Once again, Dr. Shipman was the last person to see her alive. He later signed her death certificate, citing old age as the cause of death. Kathleen's daughter, Angela Woodruff, a lawyer, became suspicious when she found her mother's will, which stated that she had left her house to Dr. Shipman. While Shipman was close to their family, the suspicious part was that the will mentioned only one of her 2 houses. This suggested that whoever had written the will was unaware of the second house, most likely Shipman himself. Angela went to the police, who reopened the investigation. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed, and an autopsy revealed high levels of diamorphine, heroin, in her system. When questioned, Shipman claimed that Grundy was a heroin user and had noted this in his medical records before her death. However, Shipman had recently started using computerized medical journals, and he was unaware that the system automatically saved the last edit date. When police checked the computer records, they found that Shipman had added the heroin use entry after Grundy's death. This alone was not enough to arrest Shipman, but then, police found the typewriter used to forge the will. The typewriter had specific defects that matched the missing characters in the fake will. On September 7, 1998, the well-respected Dr. Harold Shipman was arrested. As the news spread, more families came forward, revealing dark suspicions about the deaths of their loved ones under Shipman's care. Many had doubts, but never spoke up against the town's most trusted doctor. The police investigated 15 more cases, revealing a chilling pattern. Patients were given a lethal dose of diamorphine. Shipman would sign the death certificate himself, often listing old age as the cause. He frequently recommended cremation, destroying all evidence. But authorities weren't finished yet. They reviewed every case Shipman had handled, re-examined medical records, death certificates, and even exhumed bodies for forensic testing. What they found was beyond horrifying. From 1975 until his arrest, Harold Shipman had murdered at least 218 patients. But the true number? It could be as high as 260. Shipman was found guilty of 15 murders and sentenced to life in prison. But even that wouldn't be the end of his story. On January 13, 2004, guards found Harold Shipman dead in his cell. He had hanged himself with bed sheets. But what came next was even more disturbing. A fellow inmate revealed that Shipman had confessed not to 260 murders, but to 508. More than 500 lives taken by the hands of a man the world once trusted. His true motive? A mystery. Some believe he was a psychopath, others say it was for money, and some think it all traces back to his mother's death. She had cancer and was given morphine for the pain. Experts believe that perhaps Shipman wanted to see his patients die the same way his mother did, under the effects of morphine. This was the horrifying story of Dr. Harold Shipman, one of history's most notorious serial killers.